Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity for the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway Association to participate in your conference. My name is Brad Pickel. I'm the executive director of the association. And we just wanted to share some information that we have about the state of the waterway here along the East Coast, but also try to frame it in the bigger framework of marine transportation as a whole on the Eastern Seaboard. As I mentioned, I'm with the AIWA, and we were organized in 1999 as a 501c6 membership organization. And what that means is just that we are a nonprofit, but we were designed and constructed to be an advocacy organization. And when people make donations to us, it is not tax deductible, but we have the opportunity to spend the majority of our time on advocacy and education. And so we actually see it as a benefit to our members. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute about who those members are. But in essence, they're the stakeholders for the waterway from Virginia, around the Norfolk, Virginia area, all the way down into Florida. We have developed strategic partnerships now with our colleagues to the north, primarily in the New Jersey area, around the Delaware River, and then coming up to the New Jersey Intercoastal Waterway. And we're continuing to reach out to different stakeholders because, as I'll show in a minute, it's all one connected water body. We just happen to be responsible for the authorized project south of Norfolk. And our goal is very specific. We don't get muddied. The issues don't get muddied for us with a lot of different priorities. It is to secure federal funding and congressional support for the Corps of Engineers to receive money to do dredging. We absolutely work with other partners and other organizations, and I'll share some slides talking about how we do that. But our primary mission is dredging. How can we remove material from the intercoastal waterway that can provide for safe, cost-effective navigation? This is just a kind of a slide to center us as an organization, as this talk today, knowing that we've got representatives from not just in the US, but also across the pond, to let you know the area that we focus on. And it does run from just around Norfolk all the way down to the Florida Keys. There hasn't really been any dredging historically in the Florida Keys area. The majority of the work that we focus on is from the Hampton Roads, Norfolk area, all the way down until about Miami. Baker's Hollover would be the inlet if you're familiar with the southeastern Florida stretch. And it's a unique waterway. The reason why that we only focus on this stretch is because when we were authorized as a project, this is going back into the early 1900s, late 1800s, there was no connection between Chesapeake Bay in Virginia to the Delaware River. There was no C&D canal. And so the decision was made at that time to do a combination of projects that connected from Norfolk down, knowing that over time, at some point, the country would get to a position where they wanted to make that connection. And so over time, sections of the waterway were added in different time periods. Some of the earlier stretches were definitely in the Virginia area and the North Carolina area. We had some stretches near Charleston, South Carolina, that was initially developed in the 1700s and 1800s, along with some stretches around Savannah and Jacksonville, but it was primarily based around those population centers. And the reason being is that it was for not only commerce, but it was originally developed for national defense. A lot of people don't realize it, but the War of 1812 really showed the Achilles heel of the United States, in that we were not able to service a lot of our population centers in the Southeast or get materials out of the Southeast to the North, because the British blockade during the War of 1812 really hamstrung those efforts. And so there was some work done at that point to say we have to figure out a way to take advantage of these naturally occurring water bodies, these bays and river systems, and connect them. So the majority of the work done in the Intercoastal Waterway was in the 1800s and the early 1900s to take these existing bodies of water and then connect them together. And that's the reason why you see the second paragraph on my slide about it being authorized to 12 feet deep with widths of 90 feet through land cuts, and then 150 feet in open water areas. And that's because we do have a number of land cuts. If you're familiar with the stretches of the waterway, the easiest one for me is here in South Carolina. I am based out of Beaufort, South Carolina, but the stretch from Charleston up to North Carolina, there's a large land cut where we literally just moved the material and dug a ditch and it's often called the ditch. And there's some other stretches down in the Florida area that are similar to that, Savannah through its extensive marsh systems. And so we have some unique challenges that this affords in that where we have existing deep water, it's very easy to maintain the waterway. But where we've excavated through marshes or through land cuts, there's often a lot more silt and filling in of the waterway. So as an association, even though we are focused on the full 1,100 miles from north to south, we really are fortunate in that we have less than 20 projects or trouble spots that we have to maintain on a consistent basis in this stretch, because a majority of them are not filling in naturally. So we're in pretty good shape overall. But we're part of a bigger system. If you'll notice on this slide, and this comes from the Maritime Administration, the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. The Maritime Administration is the sub-agency that works under DOT to maintain what they call the America's Marine Highway routes. And as you can see on this slide, over on the right-hand side, you see the Florida, Georgia, all the way up to Virginia. That's an M95 stretch. And then you see a little bit of a stretch to the left that says M64. That's actually a really unique project in that they are moving container on barge traffic up through M64 into Richmond so that they can, we're not only just shipping things on like seed and feed and scrap metal like we do in the North Carolina stretch, but we also have container on barge service. The idea being is to remove trucks from the highway. That's a very, very congested area of our interstate system. If you're familiar with that around the area from Richmond into Hampton Roads, even though we have a large port there, it's very congested, and they've been able to move some containers on the barge. And they've also started to add in the last few years, refrigerated containers. I wanted to highlight that because we see that as a really big opportunity for Marine Highway 95. Looking at not just on that stretch, but knowing the population centers that we have through the Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Long Island opportunities, we think that there's going to be some short sea shipping that can start taking place to where it will become cost effective to move products all the way up and down our eastern seaboard. And that's the reason why the association that I work for, the AIWA, is starting to make those partnerships stronger and really investing our time and energy, because we believe it's not just the number of ports we have moving from Miami in the south to Jacksonville, Florida, to Savannah, Georgia, and Brunswick, Georgia, to Charleston, South Carolina, Wilmington and Morehead City in North Carolina, and Norfolk. It's not just these inland area, these coastal ports that then move the products inland. We see an opportunity for there to be some shipping along the waterway if we can provide a well-maintained waterway. But as long as businesses have to make decisions on 5, 10, 15-year, 20-year time horizons, we have to be able to demonstrate that we can get funding for the waterway on the same time horizons, and also then not only get the funding, but execute the projects. So we have to build a comprehensive program. And the way that we've started to do that is to take Marine Highway 95 and really push that as an operational opportunity that we don't see in a lot of other areas. You also see the inland river projects and along the west coast of the US, but we see that this is the path forward for the AIWA. And the reason why is this is a busy slide, but I'm really just wanting to focus on the upper right-hand side, the orange box. This is once again some work that was, or a study that was done by the Maritime Administration of US DOT a few years ago now, but they estimated by 2040 that freight volume in the US would grow to an increase of 45%. A tremendous increase, knowing that especially along the eastern seaboard and Interstate 95, we already have some very substantial, prior to COVID, very substantial traffic jams and traffic issues. And if you go to the box right below it, you see the freight movement is multimodal box. What they anticipated, what DOT was anticipating, is that of that increase, of that 45% increase, that 43% of that would be handled by trucks. Well, for those of you that, at least those of us that live in the US and have become accustomed to Amazon Prime and next day shipping, absolutely we can see a lot of things will need to come by truck. And we also have perishables and other items that need to be there tomorrow, healthcare issues regarding medicines. But we don't believe that there's going to be the capacity to do that. So we think there's a capacity issue in addition to cost. The most expensive way to transport here in the US is by air, but the second would definitely be by truck. Moving down to the second box, or the staying in the same box, but the second mode of transportation, we see that they were feeling that we could increase the rail traffic by 37%. Once again, we support all modes of transportation, and we think that would be great. But we've got one county in Georgia that doesn't have 1 inch of rail line. And it's not just in Georgia, but we have a number of places that you just can't reach by rail along the eastern seaboard. Unfortunately, the projections were only an increase of 10% by water. And that's where we think we can make a difference, especially on the eastern seaboard of the US and the inland rivers, is that we believe that we should be able to increase the tonnage moving on the water more than just 10%, more than just 125 million tons, when you're looking at over 5 billion tons by truck. So although these percentages may seem a little bit closer, when you look at absolute numbers, 125 million versus 5.6 billion, we don't see how it's really going to be able to be pulled off here in the US, especially when you start looking at truck driver shortages. This is some information that came from the American Trucking Association, and they currently are predicting by 2028, which is only a short 7 or 8 years from now, 8 years from now, a shortage of 160,000 truck drivers. And they estimate that they're going to need to add approximately 1.1 million drivers in the next decade, or just 110,000 per year. What we're seeing, though, is although these are needs and goals, is that we actually are facing issues with high turnover rates, an aging driving population, and the profession itself needing to do more, not only in retaining the existing employees that are aging out, but really growing that next generation of truck drivers. And to date, as you can see by the numbers, we were able to balance a little bit, but we're currently at 60,000, expecting to go to on the order of about 110, and then on to 160 in just less than a decade at this point. But those aren't the only reasons to choose the water. In some places, we have to. There is no choice to be made. This is a large section of bridge that was actually transported from Chesapeake, Virginia, down into North Carolina by the Waterway. And as you can imagine, something of this size can't just be put on an 18-wheeler and sent down an interstate or down a coastal road. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have issues with our railways don't reach everywhere. So in some cases, we're going to have to invest in water for existing infrastructure services, for existing modes of transportation that we need, and for example, bridges. But there's also other benefits besides the commercial operations, the limits to transportation. It's actually a huge economic benefit to our country. This was some information that was conducted. It was an analysis conducted by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis for outdoor recreation, and how the outdoor recreation really led to increases in the GDP. It was released in November of 2020. And what you can see, I just highlighted 2 points that are critical to this. And I do want to be clear that outdoor recreation definitely includes RVs and other modes of transportation. But diving into our piece, when you're looking at it nationally on the whole, it accounted for 2.1% of GDP. Keeping in mind, this was before COVID and the pandemic. For those of you who haven't had the chance to get on the water lately, there are a number of new people joining the outdoor recreational community through boating and fishing. And we saw that just in 2019, this was from 2019, it was the largest conventional activity for the nation as a whole when we're looking at outdoor recreation. And that doesn't take into consideration this year, where a lot of people, instead of choosing to take a trip by plane or go to Disney World or Disneyland, fly overseas, they decided to stay closer to home. So we're expecting the new numbers that will be coming out based on the 2020 and released in 2021 for this to grow even higher. But these are not small numbers when you talk about recreational usage. Oftentimes for the waterway, recreational usage is treated as the stepchild. We want to talk about ton miles and weight and things of that category. But the reality is the GDP, when you're looking at it for part of our GDP for the nation, this is a tremendous benefit that we're seeing up and down the waterway. And just as a quick perspective, This is the percent add by state. And I just want to highlight a few of these. 4.4% for Florida's state GDP is through outdoor recreation, not surprisingly. You see 2.9 and 2 for the Southeast. We know that a large percentage of our state's economy, in addition to the federal GDP, is impacted by outdoor recreation. And boat sales are increasing. These are newer numbers that just came out for 2020, but the National Marine Manufacturers Association, which is the national organization in the US to represent all of the North American boat engine, marine accessories, as you can see there, anybody that's selling something that has to do with the water, they may be a member of NMMA, or they could be if they wanted to be. And they're reporting that the powerboat sales have increased 12% compared to 2019. And I've already showed you how great the 2019 numbers were. But then more than 310,000 new powerboats are sold in the US in 2020. So we've seen a huge turnaround since the Great Recession in 2008. And we're continuing to see the investments by individuals being made in our waterway. And what this doesn't talk about is the fuel that they purchase, the local marina that they get their boats serviced by, the local government that they develop the nearby restaurants and other associated jobs that come with the service industries that these users take advantage of when they go up and down the waterway. So there's a definite multiple effect out of recreational boating that historically, since 2008, has really been lagging, slowly catching up. But now with the pandemic, it's definitely been a beneficiary. This segment of the industry has been a beneficiary as people stayed home and taken advantage of outdoor recreation. But we also have additional waterway stakeholders that we need to keep in mind. And these wouldn't just be for the AIWW. These would be across the board, any of our inland rivers and coastal ports. The U.S. military, a lot of people don't know, but there's two places here in Beaufort, South Carolina. The picture on the right is from the Marine Corps Air Station at Beaufort, South Carolina, where we do a lot of the F-35 testing. All of their jet fuel comes by barge. They're not set up to receive the jet fuel by land. We also have a similar situation in Oceana, Virginia. Jet fuel coming from the Chesapeake Bay down the Albemarle and Chesapeake Canal to Oceana, which is another military base. So the U.S. military relies very, very heavily on a well-maintained waterway, and we do, therefore, as a nation. Homeland security in the Southeast, and then also in the military, the other thing to point out is we also have other bases such as Parris Island. All of the Marines that get training east of the Mississippi River come to Parris Island here in Beaufort. And we also have Camp Lejeune and a number, Kings Bay Naval Base, a number of military installations up and down the Eastern Seaboard. When it comes to Homeland Security, ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms, does most of their in-water boat training in southern Georgia, in the marsh systems in southern Georgia. So there's a Homeland Security angle for the maintenance of the waterway. Emerging industries, we're hearing more and more about wind farms. And we see that there's going to be a large movement of new industries moving into our existing ports that need access to the open ocean. But then there may be some industries that are in those ports that can move a little bit further inland if we are able to maintain the water depths at 12 feet. So it'd be those accessory industries to support the bigger industries that are working offshore. So we see emerging opportunities, especially when in the clean energy with the recent election. Marinas, as I mentioned, marinas and local governments, they go hand in hand. We have to have a well-maintained waterway for people to use it. And they're not going to be snowbirds traveling from the Northeast if they can't safely navigate the waterway. So the marinas and the local governments that provide jobs and a tax base really rely on this waterway. And specifically, I'll just name one anecdotal story in South Carolina again. In town of McClellanville is a shrimping village. And they have times where if the waterway's not maintained, they can only dredge a couple of hours a day. They can only go out through their inlet a couple of hours a day without dredging because the tide range is so high and it's over a short duration. We've got a 6 to 8 foot tide range over 6 hours. So if they don't hit the high enough tide, if they've got shoaling in the inlet, they then have to wait until the next day. And as you can imagine, those tides, they vary, as we all know, they vary every day. So that means sometimes you have to go out at midnight if you want to take care of the operations. And sometimes it's 2 a.m., sometimes it's 3 a.m. So there's a lot of accessory impacts, once again, to local tax bases that rely on these small, remote, and subsistence navigation for their inland harbors. The one I don't have up here that really falls in the Homeland Security and military is also life and safety for our Coast Guard. Our Coast Guard would fall into Homeland Security, and they need the ability to be in a safe location as far as having their operations, but also to be able to get into the open ocean to do rescues. Unfortunately, if we don't maintain the waterway, more boaters who should be in the waterway go offshore, so that only increases their number of rescues. So diving really quickly on in, what are we doing? We're trying to get the money that's needed to maintain the waterway. Here's the example of how we've done over the last few years. We've gone from 35 million in 19. If you go over 2 slots, you see that we received 22.5 million in 20. We haven't got the final numbers for 21 yet, but we're looking at, we usually start off in the $7 million range as far as a budget, but then when we get the total additional monies through what's called the work plan that Congress allocates, we usually get a few extra projects. We're not sure if that's going to happen in 21, but we did start adding in our partners in New Jersey Intracoastal Waterway to see. But on the order of getting somewhere the last few years of 35 to 22, and if you go back to 2018, we're in the 30s again. So we've been doing fairly well to maintain those 20 plus spots along the waterway, but always need to do more. The other issue that we've been working closely on is if we're to be able to go and ask for these dollars, is we need to know how much money we need. What are the current operation and maintenance needs of the waterway? So the Corps of Engineers, we worked to get policy in a Water Resources Development Act in 2014. It was actually the Water Resources and Recovery Development Act, I believe, in 2014. That requires the Corps of Engineers to give us an update on the annual maintenance needs of what is the backlog, which is the second bullet. And you'll see that in 2016, the backlog of operations needs, in other words, areas where we needed to shoal to get back to that authorized width and depth, it was 126 million. In 2020, we've been able to buy down $50 million in risk to the system. We've reduced that backlog by $50 million in light of all the, or even with the impacts of all the hurricanes that have hit in the Eastern Shore. So that's pretty incredible, and we're excited about that number. The annual maintenance is really not going to change. They provide us this number every year, and they say if we were able to wipe out that backlog, what would the annual maintenance needs be? And it would be about $50 million. That's just not a number that we're going to see very much. But when you're looking at $50 million for over 1,000 miles of marine highway, it's almost affordable. I can't pay for it in my check account, but we can definitely come up with $50 million as a country. And how do we do it? We look for new friends. This is a picture of Representative Buddy Carter. He's Georgia's sole representative along the eastern coast. His district runs the entire length of the waterway. He was at our annual meeting in Savannah in 2019. We've got a number of partners, and that's really the way that we look at the congressionally elected officials, is a number of partners, but we have new ones now. We have 2 new senators in Georgia. We have a number of new elected representatives up and down the seaboard, and we're trying to, once again, expand our reach into the Northeast. So we have new friends to make. So what are we doing? In a nutshell, we're continuing to work with our administration partners, in other words, the Corps of Engineers and the congressional members, to increase the amount of money available for the waterway. One way that we do that is we draft and get signatories for a bipartisan delegation letter that asks for more money. And last year, we were able to secure support from 19 different representatives in 6 different states, all 5 in the Southeast, and Congressman Van Drew in the Northeast in New Jersey. We expect to increase the number of states that are working together to get us funding, along with the number of offices. But when we started this effort, we had about 7 or 8 offices in Florida, and that was it. So we've made a lot of good strides in the last 4 or 5 years. We also are working with willing partners. I mentioned the fact that we go after funding and we dredge the waterway, but we also have federal funding. We also have non-federal funding in North Carolina and Florida, and we want to keep increasing that, along with trying to get South Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia to see the value of adding in some non-federal funding to augment the federal funding. Plus, once we dredge that material, we have to have places to put it. And there's only limited places on the upland areas because we have other residential development, commercial development, natural protected areas. So what we're trying to do is work with areas, the Jekyll Creek is an example of a project in Georgia, where we actually went in and did thin layer placement on a marsh. and also filled in a deep hole area, but focusing on a thin layer placement was to increase the resiliency of the marsh because it was getting drowned with sea level rise. We're not the only place where that happened. Our partners in the New Jersey Intracoastal Waterway, we worked with them to learn more about what they have been doing. They were one of the first to really do this salt marsh restoration / bird nesting habitat types project. And now they're actually getting back into doing unconfined placement again. For those of you who have been up and down the waterway or familiar with these types of projects in Mobile Bay, Alabama, or other areas, we used to build bird islands with dredge material through side casting. It became a no-no for a while, but then our marshes started eroding and our bird nesting habitat is going away. So we're trying to continue to find new ways to do those projects and continue to try to, it's actually not new, it's remembering the old, which we actually see even more of a benefit from that because there's a wealth of experience that we've seen in other areas that we're trying to bring into the Southeast. And we did it for the first time in Jekyll Creek, Georgia. As I mentioned earlier, we want to continue to build partners and partnerships with friends in Congress, and looking to create a Congressional Waterway Caucus where we literally have a group of members that will just always be pushing forth on our issues, not just on one letter a year, but on any issue affecting the waterway, as we remain engaged on the execution of funding. We see that only half of our work is to get the funding. The other half is to make sure that the Corps of Engineers executes. We have to dredge the waterway when we have the money, because if we continue to go to Congress and they give us money, but it's not turning into projects, that money will dry up. But we've got good core partners and it has been executed. And then finally, one of the things we're trying to do is grow our grassroots support. Like everyone else, we realize we're in the first 100 days of President Biden's campaign or President Biden's tenure in his first year as president. And so we've launched 1,000 voters in 100 days campaign. We're trying to work to increase our grassroots support. Once again, we know that by showing the need of the waterway through the first few slides I showed, along with the partners that we have, that will increase the awareness of the waterway, but we also need to just increase our absolute numbers. And so we're pushing hard to try to get more boaters on. It's only $25 for a boater to join our organization. We have larger corporate sponsorships for sure, but we're trying to ask our individual boaters, those people that have bought those 310,000 power boats this year, to continue to support the waterway. And with that, I know there's a lot of information. I appreciate your time again, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have me.
Brad, thank you very much for a very comprehensive overview. I've certainly learned a lot. I didn't know a great deal before, but that's because I'm based in the UK, so I'm much more knowledgeable now. Picked up on the things like a lack of truck drivers. Extraordinary that should be the case and so on. And I mean, you know, there are opportunities, aren't there? And that's the reality of it. So anyone got any questions they'd like to put to Brad whilst we have him?
Actually, I do. Brad, I'm William Ackley. And, you know, you have a surge of 310,000 new boat sales. Have you ever thought about approaching the NMMA or new dealer associations to see if they could put your membership fee in the price of their vessel so you get more of an outcome?
Sure. Thank you for that question. You know, fortunately, Boat US, David Kennedy of Boat US is our current chair of our organization, and our vice chair is David Dickerson, who's with National Marine Manufacturers Association. We are definitely working with them to try to figure out more ways to have those connections. They're turning it. How they're helping us is they're inviting us and connecting us with some of their boat builders and manufacturers and the people that are selling the products. And then Boat US absolutely does a lot of public relations and support in trying to get the word out about us. Is it as good as we wish it would be? Absolutely not. There's always more for us to learn and more for us to do. But they are definitely supportive of our efforts, and not just in leadership roles, but in trying to spread the word. And they were two of the people that are helping us, or those are two of the organizations really helping us push our 1,000 voters in 100 days campaign.
Brad, John Pepe up here in Maryland. What do you see happening with effects of government putting money into this program, how it's been affected by COVID.
It's so far we've had projects going on every year since 2018 in every state. So we have had dredging going on. This year, we're curious to see, because a lot of the in-person meetings that we would have been able to have and that staff would have been having at the Corps of Engineers level just weren't able to occur. They definitely were able to meet and work together virtually, like all of us. They pivoted. But it is going to be telling to see what's the plus up this year. But even with the money that they've had in 19 and 20, there's still dredging to be done and work to be done. The one problem area that I'm most concerned about is in your stretch. It would be that Oceana project I talked about. One of the problems that we're going to see there is it's the only stretch of the waterway that has a lock. We have both the lock on the Dismal Swamp Canal and the ACC has a lock or two. And there wasn't enough operations money. So we're not talking maintenance, operations money to maintain the lock at a 24-hour call service for the jet fuel coming down to Oceana. So we're working with our military partners to really stress the value of how not investing in the waterway could negatively impact national defense. But that's going to be a really interesting push, is to see how the pandemic, I can say that all the dredge companies were able to work. There was a couple of companies that definitely had issues, but what they're finding is that they're isolating staff, they're isolating their workers on the dredges, and keeping the amount of the general populace as much as possible. So we didn't have too many shutdowns this year or slowdowns with the dredging projects. I'm sorry for the long answer, but.
No, good information. Thank you.
So I've got a couple of pointers here. Mike says more containers, more surveys, so he's not complaining. Brad, thanks for your leadership on this, says Kenneth. Nicole wants to know if the best email for you through Atlantic, well, what is the best email for you?
Yeah, it's actually AIWA at atlanticintracoastal.net, which, there we go. I'll put it in the chat for everyone if you see it, but AIWA at atlanticintracoastal.net. It's kind of odd that we had to take the .net when we're at .org on our website.
That sounds like a technical issue to me.
Yeah, we can't get the .org site. I don't know what happened there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. Any final questions?